Welcome back to the channel. Today's guest, I am truly honored to speak with. Anne Lewis is a gifted writer, and she's also the daughter of a schizophrenic mum. Her memoir, Meet Mama Schizophrenia, captures the emotional landscapes of her experience, her pain, her growth, and her resilience. One of the most amazing things I found about her memoir is that it's in poetic form. Anne, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to start by talking about your family. So we know that your mum had schizophrenia, but essentially you were alone with your mum. Did you have any other sort of support system or a community behind you?
Well, my brother died when I was 6. My sister went to college when I was 6, and I had my grandparents, but they came some when I was young, and then my grandmother died when I was 13, and they had begun coming less, and then my grandfather died when I was 21. So when my mother stopped having people over or doing anything by the time I was 15.
I found that a lot of people mention that with schizophrenia, and I've observed that with my mum. They become very isolated. They
Mhm.
stop having people over, they don't follow up friendships, and that makes it difficult because then the nucleus family is what's left. So the reason why I wanted to talk about your family first was to put your whole situation into context, because basically you were your mum's support system. You were the only person there, and it was incredibly hard.
It was.
The relationship with your sister, would she check in often and make sure that you were okay?
No. Remember too that my mother was not diagnosed until I was 26, but she had schizophrenia my whole life. And so my sister is 11 years older than me. So I think that she had a very different experience with my mother. And because my father and my brother died in a very short time after I was born, my sister being 11 years older than me had a very different experience. And I think she, to be fair, just wanted to get the hell out. Remember, also, it was a different time where people didn't have cell phones, so it wasn't as easy to just text somebody. There used to be a thing called long distance. You had to have money to do long distance. I mean, it was a long time ago. So, I mean, it was a little different situation.
And also, everyone's surviving as best they can, and maybe escapism or being far away, putting distance between family members, if that's how you're gonna survive or be better off, we make decisions. And that was one that your sister made.
And I think that's important to note. I mean, it's not that my sister didn't love me or that she never checked in any way. It's just that she was also, when she left, she was 17. I think that's a really important thing to say is that everyone has a very different situation depending on their context, depending on what birth order they fell in, depending on what had just happened. I mean, I think it really determines kind of how you, not only does my inherent personality or who I am or who you are affect how we respond, also the context affects how you respond. Like where you are in that line and what you've dealt with. And I think that's an important thing to realize. It's kind of like grief. There is no wrong way to grieve.
Exactly.
There is no wrong way to survive.
Exactly. I've always loved poetry. I've always been a massive fan of great writers. And when you sent me your memoir and I opened it up and saw the poetry, I was like, please, God, let this be good.
Yes, indeed.
Let
Yeah.
this be good because, a
Yeah.
lot of people write and a lot of the times it's quite disappointing. But I
Mhm.
have to say that all of my expectations were blown away with your memoir. I have it here. I've read it 3 times. My God, it's just amazing. I want to ask you, at what age did writing become a refuge for you?
I think it became a refuge at a very early age. I don't have the exact age. I know at 8, I wanted to write books, and I used to write out some of my thoughts and my angst at a very young age. So, writing has always been a part of me where I share my deepest thoughts. For example, if I pray, I can only pray through writing, really. It's really my only way of accessing who I am.
I honestly felt so identified with each part of your memoir. And what I would love to do is read parts of your memoir. If that's okay with you, I'd like to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
In Piano Bench, I
Mhm.
recoiled to my corner, goddamn demons and Satans crashed over me for hours. Your eyes pierced mine, but you were talking to someone else. Ah, I can see, I get the chills now because that was exactly my experience. And I think any other family member, somebody who has dealt with schizophrenia like we have on a day-to-day basis, that's just going to resound with all of us. What I wanted to ask you was, what were some of the unspoken survival strategies you developed as a child?
First of all, I just want to say that's really intuitive that you picked piano bench. It took me a long time to write that. It has a lot of angst for me. And I actually bought myself a piano and have been teaching myself how to play piano, which is really fun. My piano bench does not open, by the way. I don't know that my strategies are good. They certainly got me through, and I still use them today, which is not ideal, which is really just repression. What you'll see, especially in part one of my memoir, which I use T.S. Eliot's quote to introduce it. I do remembering, and I said I laughed like an irresponsible fetus. That's from T.S. Eliot. And I think that pretty much says it all. You know, like you realize very quickly that your job is not to be, your job is to de escalate, your job is to soothe, your job is to take up less space, your job is to be there for whoever else needs you. Especially in my teenage years, which is part of that section, you can feel the angst and the frustration. I had to be in the upside down. And I had to take everything that was in me, especially as an adolescent, because that's when we start to really want to say what we think or argue with our parents or stand up for ourselves, right or wrong. It's just practice round, right, of what's coming.
Right.
And I didn't have a normal adolescence, nor did I have a normal childhood. So the way I got through it was to actively repress myself and be really thankful to be alive because so many people in my family had passed away, which I didn't realize at the time causes anxiety. Like when you're like, you're so lucky to be alive, you need to make the most of every moment. I am 53 years old, and I only realized that I was anxious, that I had anxiety when I was 51. I never realized I'd been through trauma. To this day, I cannot admit that I'm a victim of abuse. I think my survival comes from I think I'm stubborn as hell. I think I just decided, I made the story that I could live with. And now I'm having to unravel that story. And that's hard. And I so appreciate you reading my memoir. I so appreciate our conversations. I so appreciate me being the opportunity to be on this because I think awareness is what we all want, right? We want to no longer be invisible. But if you notice, there are only about 3 or 4 instances that are brought up throughout this. And they were only brought up because I was severely triggered by a relationship. And a lot of things are still repressed. But I guess to answer your question, I didn't mean to go on. To answer your question, I think actively putting myself down and just not allowing myself to be was how I got through it.
What you just mentioned about there being no right or wrong way to grieve, it's also the same in the sense of survival and what we do. And the natural instincts kick in because a lot of the time you have this adrenaline and these nerves. Your nerves are completely mangled. I remember I would just be so worried all the time, like just waiting for something to happen. And that was just like my permanent state. And I obviously carried that through to my young adult years, through my 20s, living through an experience where you're never calm. And so
Mm-mm.
that's your dynamic. And so when things are calm, it's like, well, something's going to happen. Even now, it's like,
I'm right there with you. So when people told me I had anxiety, I said, I don't think I have anxiety. Do I have anxiety? And they're like, oh, you have anxiety. I was like, do I?
do
But
I?
it's
What do you
yeah,
mean?
really? Do I? What do you mean? And are you going to diagnose me now? Because I'm going to look really carefully. Whatever it says, what does it say? What does that mean? I'm going to look that up. Everybody is prefaced with, oh, you're highly functioning. You're highly functioning. I want to say, no shit. How do you think I got here?
That's amazing. That's brilliant. High functioning. Yeah. How the hell did I get through all of
Yeah,
that? How did
yeah.
I get through my exams as an adolescent, through high school, through my career, like
Well,
college. Yeah, high functioning far.
yeah, it's like no shit.
No
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. I mean, who isn't? Like, you know what I mean? Like most of us are. I mean,
Yeah.
if we made it, we're high functioning because there's nobody who's not broken, and there's nobody who's not been through some sort of trauma. And there are many people that are not high functioning that unfortunately don't have what we got, which is a gift in and of itself, which I don't get any credit for because I was born with it. I
Right.
mean, I just think I'm scrappy. I'm going to go down fighting.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't think, but see, I was born with that. So I mean, I hate to say this, but I do teach, and so like I'm only 5'5", but somebody told me I was 5'4". I refuse to believe it. And at any rate, I'm 5'5", and I can scare somebody who's 7 feet tall. Not because I'm mean, but because my energy is so strong,
Yes. Totally.
which
Yeah.
says, you want to go? We'll go. I'm not going to be aggressive, but we're going to go to the death because I'm not letting go. You know what I mean? And that's how I looked at my life without conscious. I didn't do it consciously. I did it subconsciously.
Yes, that absolute grit and that not folding over in any
Right.
situation. I think, oh, that it's so amazing that you touched on this because I found that with me, there were so many things that I didn't want to deal with when I was a kid, but had to because in my household, my father was working and he had his own escape, which was he loved to gamble with his Chinese friends. And my brother, as soon as he was a teenager, he was doing his activities and just not at home. And I would stay with mum because I thought, who else is going to? What's going to happen to my mum? And so that brought with it another reality, which was, okay, you have to go with her to the supermarket, doing simple things that we do in a day to day, which is just becomes like a nightmare because you don't know what's going to happen. And within all of that, there's this part of me that developed that was like, okay, I don't want to do this, let's just get this over with. And that I've carried it through my life. That kind of courage and determination to stare things in the face and say, I don't want to do this. And you do them anyway, because
Right.
if you don't, in my situation, it was like I could not watch my mum have an episode in public and not be by her side. I knew what the price was, it was like, oh, they're gonna think my mum's crazy. When you're a kid, you do care what other people think, but you don't have the words to express like, hey, don't criticize my mum. She has a mental illness. She has schizophrenia. What would you understand about this? But that grit, I think, is a positive thing, and at the same time it can be
Double-edged sword.
exactly, exactly. So I really relate to that as well.
And not to mention, not only that, but the empathy that comes with growing up with a schizophrenic parent. There is no rhyme or reason as someone who's outside of that person's head. For my whole childhood, my mother was unmedicated. So she only had Valium because I grew up in a small town. So the doctors gave her Valium. You never know when she's going to flip out or when she's going to do this or when she's going to do that. And so you're constantly trying to just make sure everything's de-escalated, everything's smooth. You're really hyper vigilant about what's going on here. Going to the grocery store could be an awful experience. Going anywhere can be an awful experience. And that empathy, though, is also a double-edged sword because, I mean, I think it's more positive than it is negative. And it makes people good at certain things, really good, when you're trying to communicate with people or lead people or manage people in any way. But it's also such a responsibility.
And everything that you just mentioned, being empathetic and having a kind heart, there's something inside of us that goes straight to the compassionate part of viewing somebody because we had to have seen our mum through those eyes as well. And that was actually one of the questions that I was going to ask is, what are the positive qualities you developed as a result of this traumatic childhood? And it ties into this what you were saying, being empathetic, which is a double-edged sword because sometimes it can really help us to understand a situation, to understand somebody. But then at the same time, I've been so empathetic to the point where people have taken advantage of me or done me wrong because, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, because I was just like, no, poor thing, I'm going to be there. And then, damn.
Absolutely. And I think that when you're that empathetic, you can sometimes, and I know that that word's overused, but when you're truly empathetic, there's something that I read that said, when you look around the room and you see somebody noticing everybody's feelings, more than likely that's a child of a schizophrenic. Because if you don't read the room, number one, you can't be there for your mom or your dad or your sister or your brother or whoever that is you're trying to help. And number two, you aren't going to survive.
Oh,
So it goes basically down to survival.
yes.
And so what's bad about this, and what one thing I'm trying to say in that memoir, like on the back page, is that, and the reason this is such an important cause for me, is there are parts of me, like my teenage self, that have really, I've had night terrors, like where I wake up like almost like with a panic attack in the middle of the night. And I think though that one thing that really bothers me is I need children of schizophrenics, as well as anyone who's been related to any sort of like brother, sister, parent, and or I'm not trying to exclude those people, or people that have people with other mental disturbances, whatever the case may be. I don't want to be invisible anymore. And one of the issues with being incredibly empathetic is that people want to be seen and heard. Who doesn't? But when you quickly go and see and hear people, that's not always reciprocal, especially if you're really coming in hot. You know what I mean? You're coming in hot, you're all about them. So bless you. So that's just one of the drawbacks.
I became hyper vigilant as well, but I never thought of it that way. I'm reading rooms all the time, everywhere I go. I mean, I could be pulling my car out of the building, or supermarket, work, anywhere that I am, I'm scanning constantly. But I never related that back to the survival as a kid because, yeah, of course, it makes total sense. What you're doing as a child is evaluating every second, right? And then you're trying to remove in real time all of these factors that could provoke some sort of a reaction. You're trying to set up an environment where there are no provocations so that your mum can be okay. And so all of the time, I can say, maybe I'm not an expert in many things in life, but one thing I am an expert on is my mum. My eyes were on her all the time, even the way that she would breathe, the way she would exhale, the eyes, if there was a bit of warmth in her eyes and then that would just gloss over, it was like, shit, something's going to
Even
happen.
yeah, even the way like my mother's chin would move, like her mouth would set. You know what I mean? Like there's like all these things that you notice. But here's the thing, and this I think is what's important is like children, which is shocking to me. I mean, it's not shocking on a rational level. It's shocking on a personal level to understand that everything that all of us who are children do is not normal. That's not expected of other children.
No.
And there are things that we gained from that experience, but there's so many more things that we lost. And it takes, I don't know about for everyone else, but for me, I knew that things weren't right, but I didn't know why. And so I just knew it was my job to fix it. And so any anger or frustration I felt, I turned inward. So self-hatred has been a huge part of my life, and self-blame. And I guess I just so want there to be more support for us, so much more understanding. I think that all the compassion, not to say I haven't made horrible choices, not to say that I haven't done bad things, but I have this compassion for others, whether founded or unfounded, right? I mean, I believe you always give people the benefit of the doubt, but whether founded or unfounded, but it's very hard for me to scrounge up that compassion for myself or for the little me, or for the me that was 8 that's talked about in this book, or for the me that was 15, or the me that was, it's very hard for me to find that compassion,
Right.
which is terrible.
Yeah.
It's a learned behavior.
Oh my God, self-hatred, that's another, I mean, give
It's a
me
huge
1 second. Give me 1 second. I mean, Anne, I think we could talk for days. Like this,
but
I,
it's true.
it's
It's
true.
so true.
And I think out of all of the people that I've interviewed, my story is the one that I feel overlaps with yours the most.